Cool. So hi, my name's Emily and I'm a product designer on the growth team as well. And this UX showcase, I wanted to share the new GitLab onboarding strategy around the Explorer experience. So this was just the initial work done around this. So what kind of is the problem that this Explorer experience is trying to solve? Is really how do we craft an onboarding experience that will work for every user? And yeah, in a perfect world, we'd have this customized onboarding experience, which all users would go through that really matches their learning models and the way they like to learn. And until we reach that point, there will always be a few users who prefer to learn things in a different way and want to onboard to GitLab slightly differently than we have set up. And on the growth team, we've kind of dubbed these people as the explorers. So growth designers noticed there was a group of users being left out from the onboarding strategy work. And it's really those users who choose to skip the current onboarding prompts and information and just really explore and figure things out for themselves. Currently, we don't have a lot of information on them. We do know there is some drop off on the onboarding experience that proves to us that these users do exist. So this could really be a valuable problem area for us to dig deeper into. And within these explorers, we kind of have hypothesized that these users can be broken down into two categories. One of them being I've used GitLab before. So these users have either used GitLab at a prior job, school, or on their own. And they're joining this account at potentially a new job, but they've used it before and they feel comfortable enough to jump straight in. And it's important to not get in the way of their setup, but there are opportunities here to nudge them in the right direction or give them refreshers along the way. And the secondary group that we want to learn more into is kind of like these people that I like to learn by exploring. I like to learn by doing hands-on and kind of figuring things out by myself. So like Googling answers, exploring docs, naturally just exploring GitLab. And perhaps the current onboarding isn't resonating with the steps they want to accomplish first. So there's a big opportunity here to how do we nudge them in the right direction, but still help them learn in a way that is best for them. So again, this work is just kicking off. I think it kicked off a month ago. So really I'm starting with just kind of formulating a bunch of questions we want to be solved before we jump into the actual experience or strategy around solving for these users. So really, we want to know like what percentage of our new users are skipping onboarding prompts and jumping straight into work. Have these new users used GitLab before? Is it their first time? Do they struggle to get up to speed with their work compared to those who go through onboarding? And where are these users getting their information if not from our onboarding prompts? Are they using Google, our docs? And why are they skipping onboarding? Do they feel it's not the right type of learning for them, or is it other reasons? So there's a bunch of questions I think we can dig into that'll bring up a lot of valuable information. And additionally, we can relate some of these questions back to the business too, like, are the users that are skipping onboarding prompts less likely to convert than those going through onboarding? Do they use less or more DevOps stages? And do they invite more additional users or less? I think these are some questions we can answer to figure out these two groups. And then as a side note, when I was going through the starting of this work, I was realizing that the personas are really hard to match because kind of any persona can be an explorer. It wasn't dedicated just to like software developers or managers. And what I wanted to bring as an open question to this UX showcase is, should we also have personas that are revolve around life cycle, onboarding journey, or even mindsets? Like the mindset of these people are different than, like you could have two software developers that have different mindsets in their onboarding, different mindsets in their life cycle at GitLab here. And is this something useful to have? And this is just something that came out when I just started out with some of this work. So as I said, this kind of has just started. I wanted to bring it here to get everyone's opinions really early on, but I also wanted to share some of the next steps. So some of those next steps are just collect and synthesize all existing data that may relate to some of those open questions. So gathering data that exists before around the onboarded users, drop off, anything to do with that. Then we want to conduct research and understand which group is most prominent and what their goals are for onboarding. Then lay out a typical user journey for this explorer to understand their current pain points, and then understand what should be the focus for first improvements. So this is a very simple kind of like next steps for me to get after I write down all these questions. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks everyone for being here and listening. And then let me know if there's any questions.
Thank you, Emily. We'll just kind of give a few seconds to see if anyone has any questions. While Will is writing out his question, I have one for you. If you, when you were talking about the next steps, I might have missed it, so apologies if I did. Is there kind of like a high-level timeline of when you're thinking you'll kick off this work?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be over the next few milestones. I don't think we have an exact timeline of when we want to complete this work, but it is going to be like an ongoing. And now that it's kind of like one of my focuses in growth, hopefully over the next like month or two, but I think that's open to change depending on like capacity with other things.
Thank you. Will, do you want to take over?
Sure. I'm basically doing some preliminary analysis on like a survey that was done by Susan. This was something that was done last year and then kind of repeated again this year with the same set of questions. And we're still kind of looking at the data right now, but it seems to suggest that there's more newer visitors, like users that have just started with GitLab in the past, 6 months or less, that are coming to the doc site. So it seems like a lot of these new users are just looking for information, kind of anything they can find around like how to use GitLab and how to interact with it. So it kind of backs up what I think Kevin was talking about a little bit as well in his presentation.
Yeah, that's great. And I think when I was working on one of the CI projects with Nadia, it came up that a lot of like the people setting up pipelines for the first time were also going into docs too. So I think there is something with the docs that we can look into more and see how it relates to this.
Fire away, Austin.
Sorry, as I was writing, I thought I realized the question was on
Apologies.
me. The spotlight's all over here. Yeah, so I was just thinking, I was going back to my onboarding issue from back in the day last year. And in day 5, there's like a whole task list, at least it was for me, around Git. And it gave me an opportunity to explore different avenues and gave me suggestions of like, if you've never used Git before, consider using the web IDE to complete any development related tasks, or you might want to dive into more technical implementation stuff and set up your SSH keys or get your personal access token and why you'd want to use those things. I know those issues tend to be private, but I was wondering if you've ever considered using that as a guide to help maybe this explorer better discover what their options are when they first get in.
Yeah, I don't think like this explorer persona has really just come up in the past like month and a bit. Mate, Kevin, and I have been discussing, and I don't think we really have spent a lot of time thinking about what's the best way to let them explore GitLab on their own. And I think something like our issue templates for onboarding is a great opportunity. I know we're working on some like assigning tasks with issues and little steps to do certain tasks for new users. So I think it is a great opportunity. And I personally loved the onboarding issues helping me figure out GitLab as I onboarded myself. So I think it might be a great opportunity to go that way.
Yeah, me too, because in my last role, I didn't have the ability to access the repo. So I didn't necessarily get to learn Git super well at my last job. But coming into GitLab, the onboarding steps were super helpful for like helping me get a jump start from the little knowledge that I had acquired of like my own personal projects and storing them. But obviously working with a giant repository versus your own single repository, you're the only contributor, is a big difference. So I think looking at those steps would be super insightful.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Sorry, I've got a question. I was in the middle of writing it out, and I tend to write my question on another notepad because I get nervous with people watching me type. I think Andy made a really good suggestion around gamification. I believe it was Andy. And I wonder if, and I'm just curious, having listened to your presentation, if the growth team has actually thought about gamification and implementing a way by which you can encourage people to go through onboarding. Just an open question, quite curious.
Yeah, I don't know if I know we have certain things like completing task bars. Like I know Kevin was playing around with like completion of tasks as you go through onboarding and get like those like check marks when you've completed it and seeing if those work out. But this is a question I'd like to pass off to like Kevin to see if there was anything in the past we've done around gamification, because I personally haven't run into anything yet, but I'd be curious in that sense too.
Yeah, so not really. Yeah, the progress bar thing is interesting because we run the usability study, and some of the feedback that we have on this is that's okay, but if you keep adding things, like when am I going to be finished, basically? And then for gamification, I honestly don't know. We really did not. I mean, we had that idea, but we didn't prioritize it too much. Yeah. We've also run something that is quite similar to it. We did some research around consumption credits. So it would be like, for example, if you adopt X feature, we would reward you by giving you extra CI minutes, for example. So that's not gamification, but that's kind of a way to, you know, have this push and pull and reward type of thing. And this is something that, at least for the consumption credit, was not really interesting to pursue. So it's different than gamification. So it's probably something that we should try out at some point. But yeah, maybe we'll come basically at some point.
Thank you, appreciate that. I'll give another few seconds for anybody else who may have a question. And okay, thank you again, Emily. I'll stop the recording.